Hello, friends. About 99% of friends who watch my videos are not subscribed, and I would be very happy if you did. Also, don't forget to press the like button and leave your comments. Your interaction makes the content reach everyone and helps the channel grow. Also, let me know in the comments from which country you are watching the video. So this all started on a night that felt off from the very beginning. And trust me, when you've been driving as long as I have, you start to feel the highway's moods like it's alive. Somehow I was hauling a shipment of frozen meats across state lines, cutting through a stretch of highway in the middle of nowhere. And I mean nowhere. No gas stations, no towns, just trees and darkness stretching out forever. Now I'd driven that route before and it always gave me the creeps. But this time was different. I'd barely made it 10 miles past the last diner when my CB radio crackled to life and someone whispered my name. I froze. I hadn't spoken to anyone all night, and I definitely hadn't used my name on the radio. I answered back, but got only static and a weird low hum that started buzzing louder, like it was crawling inside my skull. I shut the thing off and tried to shake it off. Probably just some joker playing around, I told myself. But the road didn't agree with me. The air felt too still, and every shadow on the tree line looked like it wanted to step out and hitch a ride. About an hour later, the fog rolled in, thick and sudden like someone poured milk over the highway. My headlights barely cut through it, and I had to slow. Way down. That's when I saw her, a woman standing dead center in the road. White dress soaked and clinging to her like she'd just crawled out of a lake. I slammed the brakes hard, tires screeched, and the trailer groaned behind me, but I managed to stop just feet from her. She didn't flinch, didn't move, just stared right at me. I leaned out the window, yelling, asking if she was all right. No response. I blinked, and suddenly she wasn't there anymore, just gone into the fog like she was never real. I sat there, heart-pounding, sweat on my neck, even though it was cold enough to see my breath. I finally started rolling forward again, slow and careful, thinking. Maybe I was just tired, but then the smell hit me, something foul and rotting, like old meat left out in the sun, and it was coming from the sleeper cab behind me now. I knew I hadn't picked up anything weird, just frozen meats and some supplies. Nothing that could stink like that. But I pulled over, checked the trailer, everything, sealed tight, no leaks, no dead animals. I opened the sleeper cab and my blood went cold, because scratched into the wall behind my seat in what looked like dried blood were the words, "Don't stop again." I backed away fast, slammed the door and locked it, and I didn't stop driving for the next 5 hours straight now. That was just the beginning. See, after that night, things kept getting weirder. I'd hear tapping on my windows when I was the only truck on the road. I'd see faces in the rear view mirror that weren't mine. And once I even saw someone crawling underneath my rig while I was going 60 on a straightaway. And when I stopped to check, no one was there, just long drag marks in the dirt beneath my wheels, like something had clung. To me, I stopped taking that route for a while, but the nightmares didn't care. They followed me home every night. I'd see her, that woman in the white dress, standing at the foot of my bed, soaking wet eyes, black as pitch, whispering something I couldn't quite hear. It drove me damn near crazy. I even took time off, tried therapy, thought maybe I was cracking under the stress, but nothing helped. The more I ignored it, the worse it got. Eventually, I figured maybe I needed answers, maybe whatever was haunting me was tied to that road. So I went back, talked to some old-timers at truck stops, asked if they'd ever seen anything like it. One guy, pale, skinny, like he hadn't slept in a year, leaned in close and said, "She's real. All right, and if she's chosen you, you're screwed." He said she was a woman who died in a wreck on that highway years ago. They never found her body, only the blood trail leading into the woods, and drivers have been seeing her ever since. Some say she lures you to crash. Some say she wants revenge. But the creepiest story I heard came from a guy who said she follows you home, waits until you forget, then takes something from you piece by piece. I didn't want to believe it, but then things at home started. Going missing, little things at first, my keys, my socks, pictures off the wall. Then I started hearing water running in the middle of the night. My daughter said she saw a lady in the hallway one night and that she was crying and wet. I packed up my family and sent them to stay with my sister, and I went back on the road alone. If she wanted me, she could have me, but I wasn't letting her near my kid. The last time I saw her was a month ago. I was driving through that same stretch again, middle of the night, same thick fog, and there she was again, standing right in front of me. This time I didn't brake. I hit the gas and drove right through her, or so I thought. My cab filled with water, instantly cold. Soaking water, and I couldn't breathe. I felt hands on my face, pulling me down, choking me. I swerved, nearly flipped the rig, but somehow managed to stop on the shoulder. When I looked around, everything was dry, and she was gone again. But I knew then she wasn't just a ghost. She was something else, something that could reach into my reality and twist it. And now, no matter where I go, I still feel her, sometimes in the mirror, sometimes in the shower, sometimes in my dreams. And every now and then when I pass another trucker and look into their eyes, I see the same haunted look I carry, and I know they've seen her too. So if you're ever driving down Highway 71 near mile marker 239, and you see a woman in white in the fog, don't stop. Don't slow down. Don't even look her in the eyes, because once she sees you, you're already hers. I still drive because it's all I know, but I don't sleep much. And I sure as hell don't take that road, unless I have no other choice. And when I do, I make peace with myself first, because one of these nights I know I won't make it back. That's the truth. No gimmicks, no campfire story, just a trucker trying to warn the next guy. Stay safe out there, and remember, some ghosts don't want closure. They want company. So after that last incident with the water filling my cab and those ice-cold hands choking the life out of me, I started driving different, not just routes, but the way I thought about the road itself. I used to think of the highway like a big open stretch of freedom, like she was something beautiful now. I know she's got teeth, and if you ain't paying attention, she'll eat you whole. I kept a small Bible on my dash, even though I ain't been to church in years, and I started hanging charms. From my rearview mirror, some rosaries, some native protection talismans, a little dream catcher. One of the guys gave me at a truck stop in Arizona. He said it helped him sleep after he saw the road split in half, and something crawl out of it now. That's a story I wish I could laugh at, but after what I've seen, I just nodded and thanked him anyway. The charm didn't stop the nightmares, but they stopped her from coming all the way into my truck, at least for a while. But she wasn't the only thing out there. One night, I was running through the deep south two-lane highway trees, crowding the edge of the asphalt so thick they looked like a solid wall. It was about 3 a.m. I hadn't seen another pair of headlights in over an hour when I spotted someone standing on the side of the road hitchhiking. Now I know you're thinking that's how every bad story starts. But something about this guy was different. He was tall, rail-thin, wearing an old army jacket and holding a cardboard sign that just said home in big block letters. I should have passed him by, but I felt this pull like gravity, like my hands weren't my own, and the wheel turned just enough that I was pulling over without even realizing it. He climbed in without saying a word, just dropped his backpack at his feet and stared out the windshield. I asked him where he was headed. He just said, "Keep driving the cab." Got ice cold the second he shut the door, and my breath fogged up like it was the dead of winter. Even though it was summer in Mississippi, we rode like that in silence for what felt like hours. The radio wouldn't work, my phone had no signal, and every time I glanced at him, he looked a little less human. His skin started to take on this grayish tone, and his eyes, they didn't blink. They didn't even look real, just big black buttons like a doll. Finally, I couldn't take it. I pulled over, turned to him and said, "I think this is where you get off." And he turned to me real slow and smiled. A mouthful of crooked yellow teeth, and he said, "I already am home." Then he opened the door and stepped out into the night. No lights, no houses, no signs, just pitch black trees. And then he was gone. I don't mean he walked away. I mean he was just gone, like he vanished into thin air. I drove off fast tires, kicking up gravel, and I didn't stop for another 100 miles. I still think about that guy and what he meant by home. Maybe he meant my truck, maybe he meant the road, maybe he meant he belonged in that stretch of darkness, and I was just passing through. There are places out here that don't belong to us. They belong to something older, something that remembers when the earth was quiet and the skies were full of things that didn't have names. I started calling these places thin spots, where the line between our world and whatever's on the other side wears down enough for things to slip through. I've hit a few of them in my time, and every time I do, something awful comes out. One time, I drove through a thunderstorm in Kansas that didn't show up on any radar. There were no clouds, no lightning, just thunder, loud enough to make my chest hurt, and with every rumble, something in the fog ahead of me got closer. A shape, as tall as a billboard, walking down the middle of the road and dragging what looked like chains behind it. I didn't stop that time. No way, I just turned up the engine and tore down that highway, praying to whatever would listen that I wouldn't run out of gas. When I looked back, it wasn't there anymore, but the chains, I could still hear them dragging against the asphalt like they'd gotten stuck in my wheels, and followed me all the way to the next truck stop. And when I checked my tires, there were long, thin gouges and the rubber like claws had been scratching at them. I told one of the old-timers at the stop what happened, and he went pale, said I'd driven through Devil's Hollow, a place the local tribe said was cursed long. Before any roads were built through it, I didn't sleep that night, and I didn't take that route again. But the thing is, the road doesn't forget you. It's like once you've seen past the veil, it sees you too, and you become part of its stories. Like a living legend, the kind other drivers whisper about in truck stop diners when the lights flicker and the coffee tastes like ash. I've heard guys talk about a gas station that only shows up when you're almost out of fuel, but if you go, inside you never leave. Or if you do, you're not quite yourself anymore. There's a place in Nevada where the stars blink in patterns, and if you stare long enough, you'll start to understand a language that wasn't meant for humans, I heard. About a guy who stopped to help a stranded family only to find out they were all long dead and had died in a crash on that same stretch 10 years ago. Their car still there, rusted and full of bones. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is too much. This can't all be true, but I'm telling you, it is every damn bit of it. And I got the scars, the gray hair, and the hollow look in my eyes to prove it. My name is Rick, by the way, been driving for 30 years, and I've seen more horror out here on the road than most folks see in a lifetime. And I ain't done yet because something tells me my story ain't over. Not by a long shot. I got one more delivery to make one last run through the worst stretch of haunted highway in the country. And if I come out the other side, maybe I'll finally get some answers. Or maybe I'll end up another ghost standing on the side of the road waiting for the next poor soul to pull over whatever happens. You'll hear about it because the road always remembers, and it always tells its stories through us, the ones who keep the wheels turning long after the sun sets and the real world falls away. So next time you're out there driving late and you feel like you ain't alone, check your mirrors, listen close, and whatever you do, don't stop for anyone standing in the road, especially if they're soaking wet and staring straight at you, because that might be her. And if it is, well, then I guess it's already too late for you too. She always comes back no matter how far I drive or how many states I put between us. I've changed trucks, swapped companies, even tried to settle down for a while, but she finds me. It's always the same. Middle of nowhere, dark stretch of highway, no exits for miles. I'll start getting that feeling like the air's gone thick, like I'm not breathing oxygen anymore, but something heavier, colder. Then the radio dies. Then the lights flicker. Then the shadows on the side of the road get longer, even though there's nothing around to cast them. That's when I know she's near, and it's not just her anymore. Something followed her out. I don't know if it was her shadow, her past, or something she brought back from wherever she crawled out of, but it's different. It doesn't try to scare me. It tries to convince me. It whispers in the vents when I'm trying to sleep, tells me I'm wasting my life, that I should stop driving, that I should let go. One night, it took the shape of my mother, been dead 15 years, and stood in the middle of the road. I swerved and nearly jackknifed into a ditch. When I looked back, there was no one there, no tracks, no sign anyone had been in the road. It's gotten smart. It knows what hurts. It knows where the soft spots are in my mind, and it pokes at them when I'm tired, when I've been driving too long, when I haven't eaten in a while. I started keeping a journal, trying to make sense of it all, documenting every strange encounter. But the more I write, the less real the rest of the world feels. Sometimes I flip back through the pages and don't remember writing them. Sometimes the handwriting isn't mine. Sometimes the pages are torn out. Other drivers don't talk to me much anymore. They see the look in my eyes and turn away. A few ask questions, but I can tell they don't really want the answers. You think you do, everybody does, but once you hear the truth, it changes you. It's like a crack in your windshield that spreads until the whole thing's a web of fractures. You can still drive, but the road never looks the same. I've met others like me, the ones who've seen too much. You can spot them at the rest stops, sitting in their cabs, engines off, staring into nothing. I talked to a guy in Utah who said he drove past himself once. Same rig, same plates, same face behind the wheel, staring back at him with dead eyes. Said the other him smiled, then veered off into a canyon. He never found the wreck. Another told me he kept picking up the same hitchhiker over and over again. Every state, every route. Each time the guy got in, he'd say, "We've done this before," and then vanish 10 minutes later. I don't know if we're cursed or just chosen. Maybe the road likes us. Maybe it needs us to carry these stories like vessels. Maybe that's what we are, just rolling confessionals for the haunted. But I keep driving. I have to. The road calls to me like a song I can't stop humming, even though I hate the tune. I can't sleep in a bed anymore. I tried. Feels like I'm drowning when I lie still, like the mattress is pulling me under. So I sleep in the cab, engine humming low, my hand never far from the ignition, just in case I need to run. But run from what? That's the question that eats at me. Because what if it's not chasing me? What if I'm chasing it? What if some part of me wants to see it again, wants to understand, wants to become like it? I look in the mirror sometimes and wonder if I'm still me. The man I used to be wouldn't have kept driving. He would have pulled over, found help, gone home. But I don't have a home anymore. The truck is my home. The road is my blood. And the horror. The horror is the only thing that makes me feel real. I don't know how this ends. Maybe I disappear like the others. Maybe I become a story driver's tell to scare each other around diner tables. Maybe I pick up a passenger who takes me somewhere I can't come back from. But if you're out there, and you see me pass by, old red Kenworth, license plate chipped and unreadable, driver with tired eyes and a cracked windshield, don't honk. Don't flash your lights. Don't try to wave me down. Because if I stop, something might climb into your rig. And if it does, you'll never truly be free again. I tried quitting once. Parked the rig at a yard in Nevada, turned in my keys, told the boss I was done. Thought maybe I'd find peace off the road, get a room somewhere quiet, pick up a normal job, breathe air that didn't come through a diesel vent. I lasted 5 days. 5 days of silence, normalcy, and then the dreams started. Not dreams exactly. More like vivid memories of places I'd never been. Highways that don't exist on any map. Voices whispering names I don't know but somehow recognize. I woke up one night with gravel in my mouth and my hands gripping an imaginary steering wheel. I'd walked 5 miles in my sleep toward the highway. I didn't remember leaving the motel. I didn't even have my shoes on. That's when I knew it wasn't a job anymore. It was part of me. Or maybe I was part of it. I came back to the truck and she was waiting for me. Not the company truck. I mean her, the woman on the road. I don't know what to call her anymore. Ghost? Demon? Memory? Maybe she's the road itself, made flesh. She doesn't always appear the same. Sometimes she looks like someone I loved. Sometimes she looks like someone I buried. But I always know it's her because her eyes are empty. Not dead, not lifeless, just empty. Like someone hollowed them out and forgot to fill them back in. One night, somewhere outside Oklahoma, I found a rest stop that looked decent. Pulled in to catch some sleep, but when I climbed into the sleeper cab, it wasn't my truck anymore. The layout was wrong. The air smelled like mold and burnt hair. And there was someone already lying in the bunk, curled up, facing the wall. I backed out slow, didn't say a word, shut the door gently and sat behind the wheel all night with my hazards on, staring at that cab in the mirror. At sunrise, I opened it again. It was empty, just my sleeping bag and the same crumpled fast food wrappers. But the imprint was still, there in the mattress. I've driven through places that don't show up on GPS. Towns with no signs, no people, just roads that loop back on themselves like a snake eating its own tail. One place, I swear to you, was full of mannequins. Hundreds of them, dressed like they were going to work, frozen mid-wave or mid-step. Not a living soul anywhere. I didn't stop. I couldn't. Their heads turned as I passed, one by one, like they were following me. Sometimes I think I'm not alone in the cab, even when I look alone. I catch glimpses in the rear view. Someone sitting on the passenger side, just barely out of focus. A woman brushing her hair. A man with no face. A child holding a balloon that never moves no matter how fast I drive. I tried setting up cameras, but they only catch static when the shadows move. I once picked up a guy who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Said he was walking to Texas, trying to outrun something. I told him I'd take him as far as Amarillo. He barely spoke, just stared out the window, muttering under his breath. I caught one phrase over and over. She knows where the blood is buried. I asked who she was. He looked at me finally and said, "The one you think you left behind." Dropped him off at a diner. 2 hours later, I passed the same diner again. Same name, same waitress, same man sitting at the counter. He didn't look at me this time. I kept driving. I've learned to stop asking questions. The road doesn't like questions, it just wants you to keep moving. The moment you stop and think too long, it unravels you. That's why I'm telling you this now. Because if something ever happens to me, if I disappear or you find my rig abandoned on a shoulder somewhere with the lights still on and the engine cold, I need someone to know. Not all roads lead home. Some lead somewhere else. Somewhere hungry. One time, I got a delivery route that took me through the Rockies. Beautiful drive in the day, but by night, those winding roads feel like a snake coiling around your throat. Snow started falling halfway through the pass. Light at first, then thick enough that I could barely see the reflectors on the road. I slowed to a crawl, hazard lights blinking through the whiteout. That's when I saw someone standing in the middle of the road. A little boy, no jacket, barefoot, just standing. There with his arms outstretched like he was asking to be picked up. I slammed the brakes and the rig slid sideways a bit, but stopped in time. I jumped out and ran toward him, yelling, "What are you doing out here? Where are your parents?" He didn't say a word, just turned and ran straight into the trees like he wasn't cold at all. I chased him maybe 10 feet before I realized I couldn't hear anything. Not the wind, not my footsteps crunching in the snow, not even my own breathing. It was like someone hit mute on the world. Then I saw it. Behind the trees, watching me, was something not right. It was tall. Too tall. Pale. Skin stretched over bone like someone tried to build a person out of wax and let it melt a little. It didn't move, didn't flinch, just stared. I backed away slow, didn't dare blink. The snow swallowed the boy's footprints almost instantly. I got back in the truck and locked every door. Didn't sleep that night. Didn't stop again. Until I hit Denver. It's not always things you see. Sometimes it's things you hear, like the whispering radio stations that come through when you drive through dead zones. No signal, but someone's talking anyway. I've picked up chatter, in languages I don't recognize or in voices that sound like people I know, but twisted, like someone wearing a friend's voice as a mask. Once, I heard myself on the radio. I was talking, telling a story I hadn't lived yet. 2 weeks later, it all happened exactly as the broadcast described. Every word. Right down. To the deer that shouldn't have been there. There's one stretch of highway in Arizona I avoid now, no matter what. If I have to take a longer route, I will. Because that place isn't just haunted. It's wrong. The pavement's cracked like something massive tried to claw its way out from underneath. There's an old, rusted sign on the side of the road that says Camp Desolation, and I swear it's not real because I've looked it up. Doesn't exist on any map, no records, nothing. But I've seen people walking toward it. People with glowing eyes and elongated shadows. I watched a man walk into that desert and vanish mid-step like the air just swallowed him. You probably think I'm exaggerating. You'd have to, right? Because the alternative is that everything I'm telling you is real. And if that's true, then the road might have you too. It's not about belief. It's about proximity. If you're listening to this, if you're drawn to stories like mine, maybe you've already felt it. The itch in your brain when headlights come up behind you at night. The unease when your GPS reroutes you to a highway you've never driven before. That's not coincidence. That's the road making room for you. I had a friend, Earl, drove tankers. Big old guy, veteran, didn't scare easy. We used to park next to each other at certain truck stops, swap stories over coffee. One night, he radioed me panicked, said he picked up a hitchhiker in West Texas who didn't speak, didn't move, didn't blink. Just sat there smiling. Earl said he felt like if he looked at her too long, something in his brain would break. When he dropped her off at a diner, she turned and said one thing. "You'll see me again when the lights go red." Earl died a week later, wrecked his rig on a perfectly straight road under a clear sky. The traffic cam footage showed his brake. Lights going red just before the crash. The diner he described? Never existed. Sometimes I wonder if the road chooses us. If it finds people who are already broken a little and slips into those cracks like oil into concrete, makes a home there. I don't know who I was before I started driving. Not really. Just flashes of normal life, like Polaroids with the faces scratched out. I keep a journal now. Not to remember, but to prove to myself that things happened. Because memory is unreliable out here. The farther you go, the more you forget what's real. One day I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize my own face. It wasn't scary. It was sad. Like I missed someone I used to be. This life, it doesn't just wear you down. It peels you, slowly, 1 mile at a time. There was this one night, way out in Louisiana, deep swamp country, where the road felt like it had been swallowed up by the dark. No lights, no towns, not even a possum or raccoon in sight. Just my headlights slicing through thick fog like knives. Through cotton. I was hauling a load of furniture, I think. Nothing special. But the GPS rerouted me after some construction. Took me down a narrow 2-lane road that looked like it hadn't been used since the 60s. That's when I noticed the signs. Not road signs. Wooden ones. Hand-carved. Hanging crooked from trees. Words burned into them like, "She watches," "Blood road," "Feed the road." I thought it was just some weird backwoods humor, till I hit a bridge that wasn't on any map. Rotten planks, rusted iron rails. It creaked like it was going to collapse under my truck's weight. I eased onto it real slow, heart hammering, eyes darting between the rear view and the darkness ahead. That's when the screaming started. Not from behind me, not from outside. From inside the cab. I looked over at the passenger seat and there she was, mud-caked, hair covering her face, mouth wide open but her eyes just black holes. Screaming like her lungs were on fire. I didn't stop. Couldn't. Just drove. Faster and faster till the bridge was gone and she disappeared mid-scream. I checked the dash cam footage later. Nothing there. Just me. But the screaming was still. On the audio. Clear as day. I uploaded that clip to a forum once. It got deleted in under 5 minutes. No warning. Just gone. People think truckers just sit and drive. They don't know about the long nights where the road feels alive, where you pass the same gas station 3 times in one night even though you're going straight, or the shadowy figures you see in your mirrors that disappear the second you turn your head. I had one route that looped through the Midwest, flat corn country, peaceful on the surface. But I kept seeing the scarecrow in different fields every couple miles. Same tattered shirt, same hat, same crooked posture. I figured it was coincidence, until the last time I passed it and its head slowly turned to watch me go by. I stopped. Driving that route, there's a way station up in Oregon where no one speaks after dark. The guys there, they've seen things. If you stop there past midnight, they'll wave you through without even checking your rig. One of them told me about a trucker who stopped on Halloween night and vanished while standing right in front of his headlights. Just blinked out of existence. His truck was still idling. Door wide open, coffee still warm in the cup holder. But he was gone. They still hear knocking coming from the trailer when the fog rolls in. And don't get me started on rest stops. There's one outside of Amarillo that doesn't exist on any modern maps. Looks clean, stocked vending machines, working lights. But everything feels off. The colors are too bright. The people are too still. And no matter how far you walk from your truck, when you turn around, it's always exactly 50 feet away. Always. I got caught in a loop there once. Tried to leave 4 different times. Every time I pulled onto the highway, the same rest stop sign came up again like I hadn't left. Took me 8 hours to finally break free. You know what did it? I turned off all electronics. Radio, phone, GPS, even unplugged the dash cam. Took the keys out and walked until the cold started to bite. Then everything shifted, like the world rebooted. Haven't gone back since. But sometimes, I still hear the vending machines when I close my eyes. You ever hear about the phantom convoys? Whole lines of trucks with no drivers, headlights on, cruising in sync through empty desert. I saw one near Roswell. All black cabs, no logos, no plates. Passed me doing 80 in dead silence. I swear to God, the windows were pitch black like the glass wasn't even real, just void. I tried to radio out. Nothing. Static. Then one of them swerved into my lane like it wanted to sideswipe me. I jerked the wheel and ended up in a ditch, engine smoking. By the time I got out, they were gone. I looked them up later. Found old. CB posts from other truckers talking about the same thing. Phantom rigs. Some say it's government. Others say it's something older than government. Hungry things. Looking for drivers to replace their empty cabs. And then there's the night. I picked up a woman on the side of the road. She was barefoot, wearing a torn wedding dress. I know, classic ghost story setup. But listen, she was solid, real, cold hands, dirt under her nails, said she needed a ride to the next town. Didn't talk much, just stared out the window, humming a tune I couldn't place. About 20 minutes in, she asked, "Do you ever dream of burning?" That stopped me cold. I asked her what she meant. She turned to me and her eyes, man, they were burning coals. I slammed the brakes and she vanished, just disappeared. I smelled smoke for days after that. Couldn't get it out of my clothes. This life on the highway, it takes something from you. Bit by bit. The longer you're out here, the thinner the line between real and unreal gets. You start wondering if you even exist. Maybe I'm already dead and just stuck in a loop, driving forever through a haunted memory. But I keep going. Not because I want to, because I have to. Something's out there. Something's following me. And if I ever stop, I think it'll catch up. And when it does, well, I guess that'll be the last story I ever get to tell. As I drove, I could feel the weight of the night pressing down on me. It was like the world had turned to stone, cold and unyielding. I glanced into the side mirror again, half expecting to see something lurking behind me, something sinister, waiting for me to slip up. But there was nothing. Just the endless stretch of asphalt ahead. But there was a feeling, an undeniable creeping sensation that I wasn't alone. It wasn't just the occasional flicker of the headlights or the gust of wind that made the truck sway. It was something deeper, darker. I had this constant nagging thought in the back of my mind. The highway. It felt wrong, almost like it was alive. Something about it had changed. The very air around me had thickened, and every mile I passed felt like it was dragging me deeper into a nightmare. As I neared a particularly desolate stretch of the highway, the truck's engine sputtered. The lights flickered, and the radio buzzed in static, making my skin crawl. My heart started to race, and I slapped the dashboard, trying to get the engine back on track. "Come on, don't do this to me now," I muttered under my breath. The truck stuttered again, then died completely. I was stranded. For a moment, everything fell eerily silent. No cars passed by, no animals rustled in the bushes, just the quiet. Hum of the night, and that damn static on the radio, buzzing like a swarm of angry bees. I tried to start the engine again, but it was useless. My eyes flicked around nervously, searching for any sign of life, any sign of something that might help. And then I saw it. A figure standing at the side of the road. A shadow against the fading light. It was a woman, dressed in tattered white clothing, her hair wild and disheveled. Her face, pale and gaunt, was turned toward me. But her eyes, those eyes were empty, black holes that seemed to pierce through the night. I froze. She wasn't moving. Just standing there, watching me. I couldn't take my eyes off of her. My heart was hammering in my chest, and I knew I should have locked the doors, started the truck, and just driven away. But I couldn't. My body refused to obey. It was like something was holding me in place, forcing me to stare. And then, just as quickly as she had appeared, she vanished. I blinked, confused and disoriented, wondering if I had just imagined her. Maybe it was just exhaustion, the fatigue, from driving too long. I rubbed my eyes and shook my head. But when I looked out the window again, she was back. Closer this time, standing right by the truck, her cold fingers lightly tapping on the glass. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. My fingers hovered over the ignition, but I couldn't make myself turn the key. I knew, deep down, that whatever she was, whatever this thing was, it wasn't something I could escape. The woman opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Instead, the static on the radio grew louder, more intense, like a distorted voice trying to break through. The temperature inside the truck dropped. I could see my breath fogging up in front of me. The woman raised her hand to the glass, pressing her palm flat against it. I recoiled, but my body still wouldn't respond. And then, she whispered something, a phrase that sent chills down my spine. "You shouldn't have come here." I didn't know what she meant. I didn't know who she was or why she was here, but I understood one thing. I was in danger. I had to get out of there. I finally gathered the strength to slam the ignition, and the truck roared to life. But as I pressed on the gas, it felt like I was moving through thick mud, like the road itself didn't want to let me go. But when I glanced back in the rearview mirror, the woman was still standing there, watching, her eyes burning into me. She raised her hand again, and this time, I saw the knife. I floored the pedal. The truck shot forward, the headlights cutting through the darkness. The road stretched on, endless and unforgiving, and the woman disappeared into the blackness behind me. But I could still feel her presence, a weight on my shoulders. It wasn't over. The strange part was that as I got further down the highway, I didn't feel relief. I felt like I was still being chased. I kept checking my rearview mirror, but nothing was there. The truck kept running smoothly, and the night air had returned to its usual chill. But then I saw it, a figure in the distance. At first, I thought it was just another trick of the light, but no. It was her again, standing by the road. I slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching. She was back, and this time, she wasn't alone. There were more figures now, shadowy, indistinct shapes, lurking at the edge of the road, waiting. I could hear them whispering, their voices low and unsettling. Their presence was suffocating, like the air itself had become thick with malice. The woman stepped forward again, her eyes still void of any humanity, and she raised the knife higher, as though it were a symbol of something more sinister. I knew I was being dragged into something far worse than I could ever imagine. And no matter how fast I drove, no matter how hard I tried to outrun it, the road would always lead me back to her, to them. To whatever dark, unholy thing had been haunting these highways for as long as I could remember. And now, it was my turn. As I stared at the ghostly figure in the rearview mirror, my hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. It didn't make sense. None of it did. The woman, her lifeless eyes still haunting me, seemed to grow closer with every blink. The road stretched ahead, but no matter how fast I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that the highway itself was closing in on me. I wasn't imagining it. This wasn't just fatigue or the exhaustion of too many sleepless nights on the road. This was real. The air was thick, dense, and cold. I could feel the pressure pressing against me, suffocating me. As I drove on, I realized the shadows by the road were no longer just figments of my mind. They were becoming clearer, more defined. There were figures, more than just one or two. I turned my head to the side, but I could barely make out the shapes. Tall, thin, like shadows stretched too long under the flickering glow of the headlights. They were standing by the side of the road, just watching me. Watching me as I tried to make my escape. Suddenly, the truck's engine sputtered again, coughing like it was choking. The lights flickered and the static from the radio returned, louder, more intense. I swore under my breath, slapping the steering wheel, trying to keep the truck moving, but it was like I was driving through a fog now. The world around me warped and distorted. The highway was still there, but everything seemed out of place. The trees by the side of the road were twisted, their branches reaching out like bony fingers. The dark sky above had no stars, just an endless void, as if the heavens themselves had abandoned me. Then, in the corner of my eye, I saw them, the figures from earlier, begin to move. They weren't just standing by the side of the road anymore. They were crossing it, one by one, like they were getting ready to surround me. I slammed my foot on the accelerator. The truck lurched forward, but it wasn't fast enough. The figures were getting closer. Too close. I could see their faces now, their eyes hollow and black, their lips twisted in grotesque, silent screams. The woman was there too, walking in front of me, blocking my path. Her movements were unnaturally slow, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. In a panic, I turned the wheel, swerving hard to the left, narrowly avoiding the figures. The tires screeched, the truck fishtailing, but somehow I kept control. For a moment, I thought I might make it, that I was getting away. But when I looked ahead, I saw the highway had split into two. One road led left, the other right. But both were equally dark and treacherous. I had to make a choice. My gut twisted. I didn't know where these roads led, but at this point, I was running on instinct. I veered to the right, hoping for the best. That's when I heard it. A voice, soft at first, whispering from somewhere in the back of the truck. It was the same voice I'd heard on the radio, the voice that had come through the static. It said my name. Sam. My heart raced. I could feel the temperature drop again. It was colder now, almost unbearable. The truck's interior lights flickered on and off, and I could swear the very air around me was alive, pulsating, thick with something I couldn't understand. I had no choice but to keep driving. I couldn't stop. Not now. But as I glanced at the road ahead, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There was a figure standing in the middle of the highway, blocking the way. It was tall, towering, its face obscured by shadows. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The truck skidded, the tires screeching against the asphalt, but I couldn't stop in time. The figure reached out its hand and everything went black. When I came to, I was still behind the wheel, but the truck had stopped. The road was quiet. Too quiet. I opened my eyes slowly, but I didn't recognize where I was. The trees around me were bare, twisted, their limbs stretching toward the sky like skeletal arms. The air was heavy, thick with dread, and then I saw them. The figures. Hundreds of them, standing along the road surrounding the truck. They didn't move. They didn't speak. They just watched me, their hollow eyes piercing into my soul. And that's when I realized the truth. I wasn't on the highway anymore. I was somewhere else. Somewhere worse. I don't know how long I sat there, unable to move, unable to breathe. The truck was no longer a safe haven. It was just another cage, another prison. A shadow passed by the windshield. A tall figure with hollow eyes, just like the others, stood outside the truck, staring directly at me. But this one was different. I could feel it. There was something more terrifying about it. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. The figure raised a hand to the windshield, its fingers dragging slowly down the glass, leaving behind a trail of frost. And that's when I realized what was happening. It wasn't just the highway that was haunted. It wasn't just the road that had become cursed. It was me. I had become a part of it. A part of this twisted, eternal nightmare. There was no escaping it. The highway had claimed me, just like it had claimed so many others. And now, I was nothing more than another shadow in the dark, another lost soul wandering the endless road. The why, feeling of being trapped on that highway in that endless loop, wasn't something I could shake off. The road stretched out ahead of me, but no matter how far I drove, it never seemed to end. The trees on the side of the road, those skeletal, twisted branches, kept following me, as though they had a life of their own. Their long, gnarled fingers seemed to reach out, as if they wanted to drag me into the darkness. It was like the highway was alive, and it was playing with me. The road itself was part of the curse, part of this nightmare that I couldn't escape. I looked to my right, out the window, and saw them again, those dark figures standing just off the road. Their faces were still shadowed, their eyes empty. They were moving closer, slowly, relentlessly. They weren't human, I realized. These weren't people. They were something else, something far worse. I tried to speed up, pressing harder on the gas, but the truck refused to go any faster. The engine sputtered, coughed, and groaned, like it was just as tired as I was. The eerie quiet that surrounded me made my skin crawl, and the only sound I could hear was the dull hum of the tires against the asphalt, accompanied by the rhythmic flickering of the truck's lights. My hands were sweating, even though the air inside the cab had gone icy cold. I could feel it in my bones. Something was coming for me. I could sense it. It was waiting for me to let my guard down, to make one mistake. And then, it would have me. I glanced at the rearview mirror again. The woman, she was there. I could see her, standing in the reflection, just outside the truck, her face pale and distorted, her eyes too dark to be human. She was watching me, but this time her mouth was moving. She was saying something, though I couldn't hear her words. I slammed the brakes. The truck screeched to a halt, throwing me forward against the seatbelt. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. The woman had disappeared from the rearview mirror, but I knew she wasn't gone. I could feel her presence in the air, like a cold breeze that brushed against my skin. She was still there, lurking just out of sight. And that's when I heard it. A low, eerie sound. A whisper, carried by the wind. It was calling my name. Sam. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. The voice was soft, but it was unmistakable. It was the same voice I had heard before, the voice that had come through the radio. But this time, it was closer. I glanced around, but there was no one there. Nothing but the dark road ahead and the twisted trees on either side. I couldn't see any figures anymore. They had disappeared. But I knew they were still watching, still waiting for me to make my next move. The whisper came again. Louder this time. Sam. My hands were trembling as I reached for the door handle. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't let this thing, whatever it was, take me. I had to get out. I had to find a way to escape. But before I could open the door, the truck jerked forward, as if it was being pulled by some unseen force. The engine roared to life, and the tires screeched against the asphalt. I tried to regain control, but the truck was no longer responding to me. It was like the vehicle had become its own entity, moving on its own accord. I looked out the windshield and saw it again, one of those figures standing directly in front of the truck. But this time I could see its face clearly. It wasn't human. The figure had no features. Its face was a blank, smooth surface, like a sheet of porcelain. But in the center of the face, there was a single, wide, black eye staring right at me. It was like it was looking into my soul, seeing everything, the darkest corners of my mind, the fears I had kept hidden. I could feel my breath catch in my throat. I was frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. And then, as if it had been waiting for me to acknowledge it, the figure raised its hand and pointed directly at me. Sam, it said, but this time, its voice wasn't a whisper. It was a command. And that's when I understood. I wasn't in control anymore. I had never been in control. The figure stepped forward, and as it did, the road seemed to warp around it. The air grew heavier, denser, and I could hear the sound of thousands of voices murmuring in the background. The world was closing in on me. I slammed my foot on the brake again, but it didn't matter. The truck kept moving, as if it was pulling me toward the figure. The figure reached out its hand, and just as it touched the windshield, everything went black. When I woke up, I was no longer on the road. The truck was gone. The highway was gone. There was nothing. Just an endless void stretching in every direction. And in the distance, I could hear it. The sound of footsteps. They were coming for me. The figures, the voices, the nightmare. It had all led to this moment. I wasn't just trapped on the highway anymore. I was part of it. I was one of them now. And as the footsteps grew louder, I realized the truth. I had never been driving away from the nightmare. I had always been driving deeper into it. I could feel the weight of the void pressing against me, the air thick with the oppressive silence. The darkness stretched out infinitely, and yet it felt like something was watching me, waiting for me to make the next move. My eyes darted around in every direction, but there was no sky, no ground, just an endless expanse of nothing. But then, those footsteps came again. A slow, deliberate sound echoing in the empty space. They grew louder, nearer, until they were right in front of me. I tried to speak, but no words would come out. My mouth was dry, my throat tight with fear, and then I saw it. The figure emerged. From the darkness, one of the same twisted, shadowy beings that had followed me along the highway. But this time, it was different. This figure had no form, no recognizable shape. It was like a shadow made of darkness itself, a swirling mass of blackness that seemed to devour everything in its path. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. The air around me seemed to vibrate with the figure's presence, a cold chill seeping into my bones. The darkness around me deepened, and I could feel my vision narrowing, as if the world itself was closing in on me. The footsteps stopped, and the figure loomed in front of me, its swirling form twisting and pulsating with a malevolent energy. It didn't speak, but I could feel it, its intent. It was here for me. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen in place, trapped by the weight of the darkness. The figure's presence was suffocating, overwhelming, and I could feel my sanity slipping away with every passing second. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I was being consumed by the very void that surrounded me. Then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, a voice broke through the silence. It wasn't the figure's voice, nor was it the whisper I had been hearing before. No, this voice was familiar. It was the voice of my daughter, the one I had been trying to protect this whole time. "Daddy," she called, her voice faint, distant, but clear enough for me to hear. "Daddy, you have to wake up." I blinked, my head spinning. The darkness began to waver, and for the first time since I had entered this nightmare, I felt something shift. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of this. "Daddy, please, wake up. It's not too late." I could feel the warmth of her voice, like a thread of light breaking through the suffocating dark. The figure in front of me shuddered, as if disturbed by the sound of her plea. I wasn't sure what was happening, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, my daughter was the key to getting me out of this. I forced myself to move, to push against the cold, unyielding weight that held me in place. My body screamed in protest, but I refused to stop. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I reached for her voice, holding on to the last bit of light in this suffocating darkness. "Daddy," she called again, louder this time. "Don't give up." I could feel her presence like a tether, pulling me back to reality. It was like I was waking up from a nightmare within a nightmare, a long, slow crawl back to consciousness. The figure that had been tormenting me shrieked, its shape twisting and collapsing into itself, as if it was being sucked back into the blackness. The world around me began to break apart. The void started to crumble, the endless expanse of nothingness dissolving into fragments of light. My daughter's voice guided me, pulling me toward the surface, toward the warmth of the real world. "Daddy, you have to go back. You can't stay here. You can't stay with them." The figure's shrieks grew louder, more frantic, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. The darkness was clawing at me, trying to pull me under, but I was stronger now. I could feel the strength of my daughter's love, her hope, coursing through me. It was enough to fight against the shadows, to fight against the nightmarish beings that sought to drag me into their endless void. With one final push, I broke free. The darkness collapsed in on itself, and I was hurtling toward the light. The world around me shifted, spun, and then, with a sudden jolt, I woke up. I was back in the truck, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. The road stretched out before me, the familiar asphalt comforting under my tires. The night was quiet, too quiet. But I was awake. I was back. And the nightmare was gone. For a moment, I thought I had imagined it all. Maybe it was just a bad dream, a product of too many long hours on the road. But then, I heard her voice again. "Daddy, you're safe now. You made it." I turned to look, but there was no one in the cab with me. I was alone, just like I had been before. But her voice was there, clear and unmistakable. And that's when I realized. I wasn't just hearing her. I wasn't just seeing her in my mind. She was here with me, guiding me, keeping me safe. But she wasn't just in my mind. She was real. And no matter where I went, no matter how far I drove, I knew she would always be with me. The sound of her voice was still ringing in my ears. But this time, it was different. It wasn't just a whisper from the past, or an echo of the nightmare that had haunted me. No, this time, it was more like a presence. Solid, unshakable, and very, very real. I kept my eyes on the road, trying to focus. Trying to shake off the feeling that I wasn't completely alone. But no matter how many miles I drove, I couldn't escape the sense that something was watching me. It was as if the air around me had thickened, heavy with some unseen weight. The highway stretched on before me, winding through the dark, empty landscape. But it wasn't just empty. No, there were things there. Things that lingered in the shadows, just beyond the periphery of my vision. The radio crackled, and for a moment, I thought I heard something. A voice. Faint, distorted, like a whisper carried on the wind. I frowned, and turned up the volume, trying to make out the words. But the moment I focused on it, it stopped, leaving only the static humming in my ears. I told myself it was nothing. Just a glitch in the signal, just my tired mind playing tricks on me. But as I glanced out the window, I saw someone on the side of the road. A figure, standing just out of reach of the headlights, but close enough that I could make out a faint outline. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding in my chest. My truck lurched to a stop, the tires screeching against the pavement. I squinted into the darkness, trying to see who or what was out there. But there was nothing. Just the empty highway stretching out into the night. I sat there for a moment, the engine idling, my hand still gripping the steering wheel. I tried to calm myself, to remind myself that I was just seeing things, but the tension in the air was palpable. It felt like something was wrong, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. And then, it hit me. The voice. The one I had been hearing all this time. It wasn't just my daughter's voice. No, it was something else. Something that had been using her voice to reach me, to manipulate me, to lure me into the darkness. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog in my mind. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The things I had seen, the things I had felt. It wasn't just a nightmare or a hallucination. It was real. And I had unknowingly been walking right into it. I wasn't alone on this road. Not by a long shot. And that's when I saw it again. A flicker of movement, just outside the edge of my vision. This time, I didn't hesitate. I opened the door and stepped out into the night. My boots hitting the cold asphalt with a sharp crack. The air was thick with silence, the kind of silence that's so complete it feels wrong, like it's suffocating you. I took a few steps forward, scanning the area around me, but there was nothing. Nothing but the dark and the sound of my own breath. But then I felt it. A presence just behind me. I spun around, but again, there was nothing. Just the vast emptiness of the road. My heart was racing now, the adrenaline coursing through my veins, but I couldn't bring myself to move. My feet felt like they were glued to the ground, my body frozen in place. That's when I heard it again. Daddy. The voice. Softer, now as if it was closer than before. A shiver ran down my spine. I had no idea what was happening, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stay here. Whatever was going on, whatever had been following me, was not going to let me go easily. I turned back toward the truck and jumped in, slamming the door behind me. The engine roared to life as I put it in gear and took off down the highway, my foot pressing hard on the gas. I didn't care where I was going anymore. I just needed to get away from whatever was out there. But no matter how fast I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I could feel eyes on me, watching, waiting. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, the road behind me was empty, but that feeling of being hunted, of being trapped, never left. As the miles stretched on, I started to hear it again. The whispers, the soft voice calling my name. It was like it was coming from all around me, from every direction. I couldn't escape it. No matter how far I went, it was always there. And then, the road ahead of me seemed to shift, as if the path itself was changing. The familiar highway I had been driving on for hours was now unfamiliar, twisting in ways I couldn't explain. The signs, the landmarks, everything that should have been there wasn't. I slammed on the brakes, the truck jerking to a stop. The world around me spun, disorienting and dizzying. The road stretched out in front of me, but it was no longer the road I had known. It was something else, something dark and twisted, like it had been pulled out of some nightmare. The voice was louder now, more insistent. "Daddy, come back." I turned to the passenger seat, half expecting to see her sitting there. But there was nothing. Just the empty seat, the darkness pressing in around me. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just a nightmare. It wasn't some random sequence of hallucinations. I wasn't just being haunted by some ghost of my daughter. No, this was something far worse. This was something that had been there all along, waiting for the right moment to strike. The voice, the whispers, the nightmares. It was all part of it. A trap, carefully laid out, drawing me in like a moth to a flame. The more I ran, the more it chased. The more I tried to escape, the deeper I fell into its grip. The highway stretched on, an endless expanse of darkness, and I knew, deep down, there was no escape. No matter how fast I drove, no matter how far I went, I was already lost. And I would never find my way back. The truck's headlights flickered as I sped down the highway, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and twist as if they were alive. My grip tightened on the steering wheel, but I knew, deep down, there was no control left. The road had changed, and so had the very fabric of reality around me. It wasn't just the highway anymore. It felt like the road had become a living, breathing thing, pulling me deeper into whatever nightmare I was trapped in. I tried to keep my focus, but my eyes kept darting to the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something, or someone, coming up behind me. The voice, my daughter's voice, continued to echo in my head, a constant reminder of how far gone I truly was. "Daddy, come back!" It was like a song on repeat, haunting and melodic, but at the same time, it had a sharp edge, like a blade to the soul. I reached for the radio, hoping to drown out the noise, hoping to feel something, anything that resembled normality. But as my fingers brushed the dial, the radio emitted a burst of static, louder than it had ever been before. I recoiled, wincing at the painful noise. And then, just as suddenly, the static faded away, replaced by something much darker, a voice distorted, deep, and cold. "You shouldn't have come here." I froze. My blood ran cold, and for the first time since all of this started, I felt genuine terror. That voice wasn't my daughter's. It wasn't even human. It was something else. Something older. Something that existed long before any of us had walked this earth. I slammed my foot on the brake, bringing the truck to a screeching halt once again. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was going to burst from my chest. I stared out the windshield, expecting to see some kind of figure emerge from the darkness. But all I saw was the road ahead, an endless stretch of asphalt swallowed by night. The air around me grew thick, suffocating, as if the world was closing in on me. I tried to breathe, but each inhale felt like I was choking. I opened the window, desperate for some fresh air, but the wind that hit me was cold, unnaturally. Cold, biting at my skin as if the very atmosphere itself was trying to suffocate me. I glanced around again, and that's when I saw it. A figure standing just off the road, barely visible in the dark. I couldn't make out any details, but I could feel its presence. It was tall, too tall, and its shape was wrong. It wasn't human. The proportions were off, twisted in a way that made my stomach churn. I reached for the door handle, my mind telling me to run, to get out of the truck. But before I could make a move, the figure stepped forward, and that's when I saw its face. Or rather, what used to be a face. It was a blank slate, no eyes, no mouth, just an empty, featureless surface of pale, stretched skin. And yet, I felt its gaze on me. I felt it crawling under my skin, sinking into my soul like a parasite. The voice came again, but this time it wasn't through the radio. It was in my head, so real and close that it felt like it was inside me. "You've been following me all along." I gasped, my mind reeling. The voice, it wasn't just my daughter. It had never been her. It had been something pretending to be her, something using her to get to me. The figure, the presence that had been haunting me from the beginning. It was here, and it wasn't letting me go. I had to get away. Without thinking, I slammed the truck into gear and floored the accelerator. The tires screeched against the road as I sped off, my eyes locked on the road ahead, barely able to see through the darkness. The figure was still there in the rearview mirror, standing motionless, but I could feel it, pursuing me. It wasn't just following the truck. It was following me, my soul, my very essence. I didn't look back again. I couldn't. The fear that was seizing my chest was overwhelming, suffocating. I drove faster, faster, until I felt like the truck itself was flying, but no matter how fast I went, it didn't seem to matter. The figure remained, lurking just beyond my vision, waiting for the right moment to strike. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I saw a light in the distance. A building, something familiar. A truck stop, maybe? I couldn't be sure, but the sight of anything that wasn't the endless stretch of road was a lifeline. I gritted my teeth and pushed the truck harder, aiming for the light. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't just a truck stop. It was a small town, the kind of place I'd driven through countless times. But this time, it was different. The town was completely still. No lights, no movement, just dead silence. It was as if time had frozen here, leaving only me to witness. I pulled into the town, stopping in the middle of the deserted street. I felt an eerie calm wash over me, like I had stepped into some kind of alternate reality, where nothing made sense and everything was wrong. I got out of the truck, my legs shaking, my mind spinning. I needed to find someone, anyone. But as I walked through the streets, I realized there was no one at all, just the empty, silent buildings and the oppressive, suffocating quiet. And then I heard it again. The voice, this time louder, clearer, more demanding. "Daddy, come back." But it wasn't just the voice anymore. It was all around me, echoing off the walls, filling the space with its presence. I spun around, but there was no one there. Had to leave. I had to get out of there. But as I turned to head back to my truck, I saw something in the corner of my eye. A figure, standing in the doorway of one of the buildings. It was her. My daughter. But no, it wasn't. It couldn't be. The figure was wrong, distorted. Her face twisted into a grotesque mockery of the girl I had once known. "You shouldn't have come back," the figure said, her voice a twisted version of the one I had heard in my head for so long. And then, just like that, everything went dark. I woke up in the truck, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my heart hammering in my chest. It was still night. The road stretched ahead of me, as empty as ever. But I knew. I knew that whatever had happened, that town, that figure, my daughter's voice, it was all part of the same thing. It wasn't over. It would never be over. And the thing that had been chasing me, it was still there. It had never left. The road ahead was endless, and I knew that no matter how far I drove, I would never escape. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick and oppressive, like a weight pressing down on my chest. I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead and tried to steady my hands on the wheel. My heart was racing, each beat louder than the last, thudding in my ears. The night seemed to stretch on forever. The road ahead a dark, endless tunnel with no end in sight. My mind was spinning, thoughts colliding in a whirlwind of confusion and terror. What was real? What had just happened? Was I awake, or was I still stuck in that nightmare? I glanced at the dashboard. Everything seemed normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The truck, the road, the very air, it all felt off. The hum of the engine beneath me had changed, the rhythm of the drive slightly wrong. As though the truck itself was no longer mine, as though I was no longer in control. And then, just like that, I heard it again. The voice. "Come back, Daddy." It was faint at first, almost like a whisper carried by the wind, but it grew louder, more insistent. My pulse quickened. It was her voice. It had to be. But at the same time, it wasn't her. Not anymore. It was something else pretending to be her. Something that was using her to reach me. I snapped my head around, my eyes scanning. The darkness outside the truck. There was nothing there. No shadowy figure, no eerie silhouette lurking in the distance. But I knew. I knew that whatever was out there, whatever had been haunting me, it was real. And it was close. My grip tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles, white as I pushed the pedal to the floor. The truck roared to life, speeding down the road, tires skimming across the pavement like a predator in pursuit. But no matter how fast I drove, the voice seemed to grow louder, the air more suffocating. It was like the world was closing in on me, pulling me deeper into something I couldn't escape. "Come back, Daddy." I could hear the words clearly now, no longer muffled by the wind or static. It was as if the voice was right beside me, whispering in my ear, the words soft and chilling. And then, without warning, the truck lurched. A sudden, violent shake, as though something had slammed into the side. My body jerked forward, the seatbelt digging into my chest, and for a moment I thought I was going to lose control. I slammed my foot on the brake, the truck skidding to a halt. My heart thudded in my chest, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I stared out the windshield, eyes wide, scanning the darkness for any sign of what had caused the jolt. Nothing. Just the empty highway. I was shaking now, every muscle in my body tense with fear. There was no denying it anymore. I was being hunted. The road, the truck, the night, it wasn't real. It was all a trap, a web that had been slowly closing in on me, and now I was caught. The voice came again, louder, more forceful this time. "Come back, Daddy. It's too late." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. It was as though the very air around me had become thick with dread, suffocating me, pressing in on all sides. My eyes flicked to the rear-view mirror, and that's when I saw it. A pair of glowing eyes. They were small at first, barely visible, but they grew brighter as they drew closer. They weren't human eyes. They were something else, unnatural, almost too big for the face they belonged to. And the thing they belonged to, it was standing right behind me, just outside the truck, staring through the rearview mirror with a gaze that pierced through the glass like it wasn't even there. My breath caught in my throat as I realized that the creature, the thing that had been haunting me, wasn't just in my head. It was real. And it was standing right behind me. I couldn't think. I couldn't move. I just stared at those eyes wide and unblinking as they grew larger and closer, until they filled the entire mirror. And then suddenly the truck jolted again, this time harder than before. The engine sputtered and died, the lights flickering, plunging me into darkness. The road disappeared beneath me, the truck rolling to a stop on its own. I sat there, frozen in the silence, the only sound the pounding of my own heartbeat. The truck was completely still now, but I could feel the presence outside, pressing against the truck, just beyond the walls, as if it was trying to get in. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I had nowhere to run, no place to hide. The voice was louder now, coming from all directions surrounding me. "Daddy, come back." The words felt like they were inside my head, twisting and pulling at my thoughts. They were like a rope, tying me to something I couldn't see, something I couldn't understand. Suddenly I heard something else, a soft tapping on the window, like fingernails scratching against glass. I looked over, my eyes wide with terror, and saw a figure standing outside the truck. A face, no, not a face, a mask. A pale, featureless mask with empty eyes that seemed to stare into my soul. The tapping continued, slow and deliberate, each tap sending a ripple of cold terror through my body. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was watch, as the figure slowly raised its hand, placing it on the window, and then it smiled. But it wasn't a normal smile. It was wide, too wide, stretching unnaturally across its face, the skin pulling tight as if it was about to tear. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get out. I had to escape. But as I reached for the door, I heard the voice again, this time right next to me. "You can't leave. You're already here." The words sank deep into my chest, filling me with a crushing weight. I froze, unable to move, unable to think. The world seemed to spin around me, the darkness closing in from all sides. There was nowhere to run. No way out. And then I realized the thing that had been chasing me, the thing that had been tormenting me all along, it wasn't just after me. It was after my soul. It was after everything that I was. And as the mask grinned wider, I knew with a sickening certainty that it had already won. There was no escape. The road was endless, and I was trapped in its web forever. The world around me seemed to darken even more, as though the truck had somehow become a prison, a cell I couldn't break free from. I tried to move, tried to open the door and run, but my body wouldn't obey me. The cold sweat ran down my back, and my heart pounded in my chest like a drum, drowning out everything else. My hands, trembling uncontrollably, were still glued to the steering wheel, as if the truck itself was holding me captive. The figure outside the window, this thing, was still standing there, its head tilted in an unnervingly slow motion, as if studying me. The mask, featureless and unnerving, made no move to speak, but I felt its presence pressing down on me, suffocating me. It wasn't like the figures I'd seen before, the ghosts that had passed through the truck or the strange happenings that seemed to follow me wherever I went. This was different. This felt like it had been waiting for me, like it had been stalking me for a long time. The tapping on the window came again, softer now, almost gentle. But it didn't reassure me. It felt mocking, like it was taunting me, testing my limits. "Don't look away," it seemed to whisper, though its lips didn't move. "You know you can't escape." I tried to shout, to scream, but the words caught in my throat. My breath was shallow, ragged. The truck's interior felt as though it were closing in, the walls pressing in on me, pushing me closer to madness. Then, as if on cue, the truck's engine sputtered back to life. The lights flickered, casting brief flashes of light that illuminated the figure's face, the mask, the smile. It hadn't changed. Still too wide, still too unnatural. And then, like it was feeding on my fear, the lights went out completely, leaving me in total darkness. Panic surged through me, and for a moment I couldn't tell whether I was awake or trapped in some nightmarish hell. I fumbled for the keys, my fingers numb from fear, but they slipped from my hands, clattering to the floor. The truck jerked, forward on its own, as though it had a mind of its own, pulling me into the unknown. I had no control. I wasn't driving anymore. I could feel the eyes watching me from outside the truck, could sense the presence pressing against the glass, just beyond my reach. The temperature in the truck had dropped drastically, and I could see my breath fogging up the windshield, the chill seeping into my bones. Then, the voice came again, this time right inside my mind. "You've been running for so long, haven't you? You think you're the one driving this truck, but you're not. You never were." My skin crawled as the words echoed through my thoughts, reverberating inside my skull. My hands shook even more violently as I tried to grip the wheel, but it felt like I was no longer holding it, like it was holding me. "Your soul is mine now, just like everyone else's who's ever passed this way. It's too late for you, just like it was for them." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was stare at the mask outside the truck, the wide, twisted smile still there, like it was mocking me. And just when I thought I might lose my sanity, the truck swerved violently, sending me tumbling in my seat. And then suddenly, the road was gone. I looked up and saw nothing but blackness. No highway, no signs, no lights, just an infinite void. The engine had stopped. The truck was coasting now, but we were going nowhere. "Where are we?" I whispered, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. You're here, with us, the voice answered. Where you belong. The figure outside the truck had faded into the void, leaving nothing but the eerie, suffocating silence. I was surrounded by nothingness, a dark, empty space with no way out. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw her. My daughter. She was standing there just outside the truck, her pale face glowing in the darkness. Her eyes were wide, empty, lifeless, and her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She was calling to me, reaching for me, her hands pressing against the window. But she wasn't the same. The face that stared back at me was hollow, distorted. The girl I had known, the girl I loved, was gone. The thing outside the truck had taken her. My heart froze in my chest. The reality of what was happening crashed down on me like a wave, pulling me under, drowning me in the void. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. It was too late. There was no escape. Then, in an instant, I was alone. The figure, my daughter, the truck, it all disappeared. I was floating in the void, weightless, with nothing but the deafening silence surrounding me. And then the voice, that same voice that had followed me from the very beginning, echoed one final time in my mind. You'll never be free. The darkness closed in, swallowing me whole, and that was when I realized there was no escape, not for me, not for anyone. Once you're caught in this place, there's no way out. I wish I could say that I woke up from this nightmare, that I somehow escaped, but the truth is far worse. I didn't wake up. I didn't snap out of it. This was my new reality now. I thought maybe I had just gone mad, but deep down I knew. I knew something had followed me, something far worse than madness. For a long time, everything around me stayed black. There was no sound, no light, just the oppressive void, stretching out into eternity. I couldn't feel my body. It was as if I had been disconnected from everything. My senses, my mind, everything. I thought I was losing it. I thought I was finally gone. But then, slowly, ever so slowly, things began to change. The silence that had surrounded me like a blanket started to crack. Faint whispers started to creep in from the corners of my mind. At first, I couldn't make out the words, just static, garbled noises. But over time, the whispers became clearer. They were calling my name. First quietly, almost tenderly, like a loving whisper in the dark. Come closer. The voice was familiar, but I didn't want to believe it. No, it couldn't be her. She was gone. It was too late. She was lost. But then I heard it again, louder this time, more urgent. Daddy, help me. I couldn't deny it anymore. It was my daughter's voice. Her terrified plea pierced the darkness, and my heart twisted in my chest. I wanted to scream, to run, to her, but there was nowhere to go. I was stuck in this hellish void, a prisoner of my own guilt and regret. The shadows seemed to press in closer around me, the air thick with the smell of something rotten, something I couldn't describe. And then I saw it. A light, a small, dim flicker in the distance. It was so faint at first that I thought I imagined it, but then it grew, spreading like the first rays of dawn breaking through the dark. I reached out toward it, drawn to it by a force beyond my control. The closer I got, the more I could hear my daughter's voice, her sobs, her cries for help. Daddy, please, don't leave me. The pain in her voice shattered me. Every part of me screamed to reach her, to pull her from whatever nightmare she had been trapped in. But the light, that damn light, kept pulling me further away. It was like a cruel trick, a trap meant to keep me from her. No, I screamed, but no sound came out. My mouth didn't move. I couldn't feel my body anymore. All I could do was listen to the desperation in her voice, hear her fading cries. Then, I saw something else. A shadow, darker than the void itself, moving in the distance. It was large, towering, its shape shifting and warping with every passing moment. It was like a presence made of darkness, an unholy entity that seemed to exist solely to torment me. And it was coming toward me. I tried to turn away, but the light, the faint glimmer of hope, continued to pull me forward. My daughter's cries were louder now, echoing in my mind, mixing with the whispers that grew sharper and more insistent. "Daddy, help me." The darkness was closing in, surrounding me, swallowing me whole. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The terror gripped me, squeezing my chest, making it hard to even keep my thoughts together. The shadow moved closer, its form becoming clearer now. It wasn't human. It didn't have a face. It was just a massive, swirling mass of darkness, stretching endlessly into the void. And it was right behind me. I could feel it. The cold, malicious presence creeping closer, its twisted form brushing against my back. Its breath was cold, like death itself, and I could hear its voice, deep and guttural, crawling into my mind. "You can't save her. You never could." The words sliced through me like a blade. I wanted to scream, to fight, to run, but my body wouldn't respond. I was paralyzed, unable to move, unable to even think. The shadow's presence was overwhelming, suffocating me, pressing down on me like a vice. And then I saw it. The face of the thing that had been chasing me all along, the thing that had been pulling the strings from the very beginning. It wasn't a face like any human's. It was a mask, dark, featureless, a grin that stretched impossibly wide across its face, a grin that wasn't meant to be. "You're too late," it whispered. "She's ours now." The light, the hope I had been reaching for, flickered once, twice, and then went out, leaving me in complete darkness once more. I thought it was over. I thought I was gone. But the whispers didn't stop. My daughter's voice, faint and weak, still echoed in the depths of my mind. "Daddy, don't leave me." And then, as if in answer, I felt a hand on my shoulder, cold, solid. I turned, and there she was, my daughter, but not the way she used to be. Her eyes were hollow, her skin pale, and her mouth twisted into that same unnatural smile I'd seen so many times before. "You never could save me," she whispered, her voice a hollow echo of the past. And then, as her eyes locked onto mine, I realized the truth. It wasn't my daughter anymore. She had never been my daughter. The thing that had taken her, that had stolen her from me, had been with me the entire time, always lurking just beneath the surface, manipulating everything. The nightmare that had started with her imaginary friend had never been a figment of her imagination at all. It had been real. It had always been real. And now, it was using her, using me, to feed its endless hunger. The world around me began to shift again, the void stretching out into infinity, and I realized that there was no way out. Not for me, not for anyone. We were all trapped here, forever. The darkness closed in, and I knew in that moment that I would never see the light again.